Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the Timberwolves' fourth quarter execution, how they've flipped it on its head from what we saw throughout the regular season, and also Ant's fourth quarter excellence in two areas. The Wolves have dominated the Lakers through 4 games of the series. It's all coming. Welcome in. You are Lockdown Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Lockdown Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We're only a day away from Game 5, which is hopefully the clincher for Minnesota as they head back to LA, up 3-1 on the Lakers. Today, I want to focus on one of the biggest issues for the Timberwolves throughout the regular season was crunch time. It was closing. It was the fourth quarter, specifically the last 2-4 minutes. And yeah, there's been some issues so far in the playoffs, but by and large, the Wolves have flipped the narrative, and it wasn't just a narrative. It was I guess you could call it a well-justified narrative, an earned narrative, if you will. But they flipped it on its head, and they've been far superior to the Lakers in the fourth quarter through the first 4 games of their first-round series against LA. I want to talk about some of those numbers and just how stark that contrast is. We'll also talk about Ant specifically. We'll talk about 2 other areas in which the Wolves have dominated the Lakers thus far. So that's all coming on the show. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, you can listen anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. It's always free. It's never behind a paywall. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku or Amazon Fire TV. And of course, over at YouTube as well. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And a reminder, you can also subscribe to the daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Subscribe there. You'll get an email in your inbox every day, Monday through Friday. Outstanding Wolves analysis. Yes, some stuff from yours truly, but also links to other Wolves news from around the web, as well as some more kind of at-large NBA national news and articles as well. Again, that's lockedondaily.com for the Locked On Wolves email newsletter. All right. Let's get into this. Let's talk fourth quarters. One of the key issues throughout the season has been Minnesota's failure to close close games. And there's no better, obvious stat for this than the Timberwolves' net rating, their point differential, their Pythagorean record. Look at any of those things. They're all very similar to one another. And if you're not familiar, what that means is the greater a point differential is, basically your margin of victory / defeat. Whatever that number is, and it's in the main ESPN standings nowadays, that the point differential is. In general, that is a good indicator of future performance and or bad / good luck. It's not the end all be all. I get it. I've heard there's obvious arguments against it. I understand it can get thrown off by a blowout one way or the other, but the point is, over the course of the season, these things tend to even themselves out. And then I guess the other layer is, why is a team bad in close games? And as we've addressed on the show many times before, it's a combination of things, or a confluence of factors, if you will. Sometimes it's just straight execution. Sometimes it's just missing shots, which I guess could be considered execution. Sometimes it's maybe you had some closer games when you had injuries. Maybe you had, other fluky circumstances. You had coaching mistakes. You had guys in foul trouble. There's all sorts of factors. But again, the bigger your sample size, so again, over the course of a season, it generally shakes out. The Timberwolves had a poor record compared to their point differential. Basketball Reference has the Pythagorean win-loss record number. And there was that Rick Adelman year, the Wolves went 40-42, but they should have been a 46 or 47 win team. This year's Wolves team won 49 games. Their expected win-loss, according to Basketball Reference, is 53 wins. They were 4 games worse than that, which I should have gone through and pulled this compared to the whole league, but I bet that's about the worst in the league. That's a pretty bad number. And I would say all the reasons I just listed, it's a combination of those things that led to losing so many close games. A combination of coaching, play execution by the players, and then just simply the execution when it comes to missing shots, poor defensive execution, etc. But in the playoffs, so far through 4 games against the Lakers, that is not the case. Hat tip to the Lakers reporter for The Athletic, Jovan, I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, Jovan Buha, I think is what it is. Again, the senior NBA reporter covering the Lakers on The Athletic, he posted after the game the other night, the Wolves have outscored the Lakers in each fourth quarter of the series. The fourth quarter scoring margin is 105-69. Or said another way, the Timberwolves are plus 36. This is me talking now. Plus 36 in the fourth quarter of this series across 4 games. Said another way, that's an average advantage of 9 points per game in the fourth quarter. That's insane. And the Lakers are obviously a good team. They were the favorites of this series. Yes, as you're all aware, I picked the Lakers to win this series. The Lakers have who is supposed to be the best player on the floor in Luka Doncic. And the Timberwolves have out-executed the Lakers in the fourth quarter to date through 4 games. Anthony Edwards specifically versus Luka Doncic, and this is a hat tip to a Timberwolves, or excuse me, a Vikings beat reporter for the SI site, BMTN Sports, Will Ragatz on Twitter, at Will Ragatz, Ragatz. He says, Ant in fourth quarters this series, 30 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, only 1 turnover. Luka, 20 points, 8 boards, 1 assist, and 3 turnovers. So 1 assist to 7, 20 points to 30, 3 turnovers to 1. Ant is shooting 43% in fourth quarters. Luka Doncic is shooting 29% in the fourth quarter of the series so far. Now, I'm careful in saying all of this because we all know a Luka explosion is just around the corner. Surely it'll happen in Game 5. Like I nobody should be surprised if that were to be the case. But again, through 4 games to build what should be a nearly insurmountable 3-1 lead, and historically has been just that, nearly insurmountable in the series. It's been the fourth quarter execution. The Wolves have dominated the fourth quarter, and that's a huge credit to Chris Finch. And it's a huge credit to the Wolves. It's kind of funny. It's one of the more macro themes of this series that in the conversations I had with the Kamenetsky brothers at Locked On Lakers and Jack Borman of our postcaster at Locked On Wolves over the last couple of weeks, we all kind of identified, what's the world look like if the Wolves beat the Lakers? In what world are we living if that's the case? And we all kind of said, well, age / fatigue, like the Wolves they just have a deeper team. And that could be a factor. And it certainly was in the fourth quarter of a game on Sunday, less than 48 hours after the Wolves won on Friday night at Target Center. The Lakers, JJ Redick becomes the only coach of the play-by-play era to play the entire same 5 guys for the final 24 minutes, the final 2 quarters, the entire second half of this game. The only player in as far back as they've kept these play-by-play records to do that. And he does it on a day and a half rest instead of, a full 2 days between games, or in the case of, this is now the third full 3-day break we're getting between games, Sunday to Wednesday. That should be an advantage to the Lakers. And it hasn't been. And obviously JJ Redick couldn't take advantage of that on Sunday, but the depth piece and the fatigue advantage the Wolves should have, and we can. I'm not going to get into I'm not going to wade into the Luka conditioning waters because Luka is Luka and he's phenomenal, but he hasn't been in the fourth quarter to this point. And there's plenty. Like, is he banged up? Probably. Is he out of shape? Relatively speaking, probably. Is he on a team that with some new teammates that he's new? He's only been on the team 10 weeks? Yes, all these things are true. But it's also true that Anthony Edwards is outplaying him in the fourth quarter, and the Timberwolves as a whole, like we go back to Game 4, we talk Naz Reid, pair of 3-pointers, great defense on Luka. Talk Jaden McDaniels, and one opportunity that puts the Wolves ahead, ties the game with the bucket, makes the clutch free throw to put the Wolves up 1, and the steal that led to the possession where Ant was fouled to get the free throws to put the Wolves up by 2 after the timeout. Like the Jaden and Naz moments are the ones that stand out the most, but Julius Randle's had great moments late. Dante DiVincenzo had the big and one. He's been a bit uneven in the series overall, but he had the big and one opportunity late, or and one conversion late in game 4 as well. So it's not only Ant, but the Ant over Luka in the fourth quarter is the thing that we have to highlight as the biggest thing. I do want to talk more about Ant, and not necessarily specific to the fourth quarter, but Ant in the playoffs overall, a bit of a half step backwards here. We're going to talk about this series, but in the greater context of Ant in the playoffs so far, what we've seen and what's been so much more impressive. There's a couple of things I want to highlight that are most impressive about Ant in this series against the Lakers compared to some of his other impressive playoff performances to date. Obviously still painfully young. So we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money, but start building wealth. You'll be shocked when you start using Monarch how much you'll save on insert category here that you don't realize you spend a ton of money on. For me, it was food delivery. I tend to do that a little too often on the weekends, basketball season especially. But now with Monarch Money, I can budget smarter and save more. Plus, it's the all-in-one convenience of, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals all in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, let's talk about Anthony Edwards' playoff performance to date in the context of his playoff career so far. This is year 5 of Ant being in the NBA. He's still not 24 years old. He won't turn 24 until August. This is his, he's been in the league 5 years. This is his 4th season playing in the playoffs. The 6-game elimination against Memphis in year 1, the 5-game and out against Denver in year 2. And then, of course, last year, the run to the conference finals. And so we've got a bit of a body of work here. It's not LeBron level. It's not 100-plus games. We have 31 games that Anthony Edwards has played in the playoffs. And we could look at his overall playoff stat line and just look at traditional numbers, and it's really impressive. The dude's averaging 28 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 5.5 assists per game. And he's shooting 39.7% from 3. So we'll call it 40% from 3. 47.3% from the field. Effective field goal percentage north of 55%. He's gotten to the line 198 times in how many games did I say? 31 games. And we'll talk about the actual free throw rate here in a second, but he's shooting 82% the line. Like, the numbers across the board are very impressive. In terms of his actual on-court playoff performance this year compared to what we've seen in the past. Well, let's do this. Let's talk individual series first. So last year, the Phoenix series was his best series, full stop. The Dallas series, some of the numbers were impressive ultimately, but he was clearly worn down. The Timberwolves were playing from behind basically after that game 2 dagger from Luka over Rudy that, nothing else needs to be said about that. He just wasn't as effective. He was clearly very worn down. The Wolves had to kind of try and conserve him a bit on the defensive end, which is not the best version of Ant, obviously. The Denver series, it was really good. Again, I'm nitpicking here. It was obviously really good. The Phoenix series is where he was phenomenal. The Wolves, of course, swept the Suns. The Suns had no perimeter defense to throw to Anthony Edwards. I mean, Kevin Durant was their best option. It did not go well. Ant, across 4 games in that sweep against the Suns, shot 51.2% from the field. 51% from the field, 44% from the three-point line. He averaged 31, 8, and 6.3, plus 2 steals and nearly a block per game across the 4-game sweep against the Suns. It was phenomenal. This series currently against the Lakers is in that same neighborhood. He was 31 a game in 4 games against the Suns. He's 30 a game right now in 4 games against the Lakers. He was 43.8% across 4 games against the Suns. He's 43.2% across 4 games against the Lakers. He's 6 points lower in terms of field goal percentage. Free throw attempts are down, believe it or not, after he shot a bazillion in game 4. He shot 0 in game 3. So he's only attempted 23 free throws across 4 games. He attempted 31 across 4 games against the Suns last season in the first round. So comparable to those Suns numbers. With a big game 5, he could end up with the best playoff series he's had in his very young career in what will be his 32nd career playoff game. What is he doing that's most impressive? Well, I heard a bit of a discussion on the I guess it was the Bill Simmons podcast. Ryan Russillo was on, and I think Van Lathan was on for this part of the conversation. And they were talking about Anthony Edwards and how impressive it is that he's doing what he's doing against the scheme that he's doing it against. To an extent, I think that's true. Phoenix tried to put 2 on the ball against Ant, but it was nowhere near, like, it didn't feel as desperate for them. It should have been because they got swept in the first round. But it wasn't as aggressive. We saw over the course of this regular season, teams be more aggressive in blitzing Anthony Edwards. And what I mean by that is the frequency and also like how far out they're trying to do it. They're not waiting for him to get, it's not like a full-on half-court trap, but they're not waiting for him to get into the teeth of the defense to bring a second guy because he's become so good at picking defenses apart. So what's most impressive to me is how, yes, he's handled that adjustment and how teams have tried to be more creative. Remember, we talked about after the game 2 loss, or Ant talked about post-game, how he was actually somewhat confused by what the Lakers were trying to do defensively. It was somewhat of a pseudo zone, almost a matchup zone, when really they're just loading basically 5 guys to 2/3 of the floor. Like they're leaving almost a third of the floor basically uncovered. But because of the angles, it's really hard to throw a skip pass in that situation. Nobody can cut back door if you're 2.5 passes away. But given all of that, we're still talking about an assist rate of 26% for Anthony Edwards over the course of the playoffs so far, which, yes, it's 4 games, painfully small sample, fine. But it's a 25.7% assist rate, which would be a career high. Last year is just a shade under 25%. For his career, he's a shade under 20%. In the playoffs so far, it's 26%. The most impressive thing, along with that, is the lack of turnovers. Turnovers became an issue last year in the playoffs for Anthony Edwards because of teams did start to load up on him. Like I think that Bill and Van Lathan and Russillo were kind of underselling how much teams were still loading up on Ant last year in the playoffs. And that was with Karl-Anthony Towns. I think people forget, like, teams were daring Karl-Anthony Towns to beat them, just like they're daring Julius Randle to beat them. And they're both very capable in very different ways of being that second side option to punish a defense for loading up on the superstar. And what Anthony Edwards did last year in the playoffs ultimately is turnovers were a huge problem. I mean, in the conference finals against Dallas, he had 17 turnovers in 5 games, which is what, 3.25 turnovers a game. That's too many. Actually, in the first round series against Phoenix, I talked about how great the shooting numbers were. He had 16 turnovers in a 4-game sweep. That's 4 turnovers a game. It's too many. This year, that has not been an issue. He has a grand total of 6 turnovers. So 10 less turnovers in the same number of games as he had this year versus comparing that sweep over the Suns in the first round last year. The turnover rate is a shockingly low 5.5%. I know it's 4 games, but that's what we have to go off of. 5.5%. He's never had a turnover rate below 10%, basically 11% in his career, which was his rookie season. For the season this year was 12%, which is still a really good number for a guy with a usage rate as high as his and how often he has the ball in his hands and how often he's creating for others. And now, his assist rate was down a little in the regular season over last year, but he still had 2 straight years where he's 21% or better, which is more than 2 points better than his previous best, clearly trending in the right direction. In the playoffs, he's got an assist rate of 26%, up over 21 from the regular season, and a turnover rate of 5.5%, which is down from 12% in the regular season. So he's assisting at a higher rate, turning it over at a much lower rate, and the scoring's not going away. This dude is still scoring the basketball at a, what is it, 30-ish points per game clip? Like, I mean, this he's still... 29.8 points per game. Like, he's still scoring the basketball. He's still shooting 45% from the field and 43% from 3 and getting to the line 6 times a game. And he's turning it over only on just 5.5% of his possessions with an assist rate of 26%. That is the what they were talking about on the Simmons podcast. What I've talked about related to his playmaking. That's coming through in those numbers. That's the decision making. That is I'm going to turn the corner because Luka's trying to trail me. I'm going to wait until the double comes and make the right pass and maybe get the ball back when it rotates back the other way for a catch and shoot 3-point opportunity or a catch and go with the defense in rotation. And instead of having a double, I got off the ball early in the possession, and now I'm going against a half of a guy because it's a rotating defender coming over to try and slide in front of me, and he can't do that. Ant has figured that out. And I almost hate saying those words. I'm not trying to like jinx anything here because we're 4 games into the playoffs. But clearly there's been a step, and I'm not saying he's not going to have a bad game. Like game 2 is very, pedestrian. I think he was worse than pedestrian in game 2. We talked about the assist to turnover in that game was the only like real issue for him, or the significant issue, I should say, in that loss for Minnesota when they scored 85 points. But in the other 3 games, he's looked absolutely masterful. And that comes through even more so in the fourth quarter. We talked a minute ago about in the fourth quarters of this series, Ant has 7 assists to 1 turnover in the fourth quarter. Phenomenal. All right. I want to close by talking about 2 other team stats that stand out as impressive to this point in the series. And clearly we can kind of underline and say, look, like this is why, it's a bit of a chicken or the egg, right? Like, but I think we can point to them as big reasons why the Wolves on a kind of 10,000 foot level have taken a 3-1 series lead and why they'll be important in game 5 and hopefully not beyond, but for the balance of this series. So we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Wayfair. Spring is here. That means it's home project season. If you're refreshing a room, maybe you're tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanities, sinks, or outdoor lighting, Wayfair has quality products for every budget. We've done a lot of upgrading really since back around the time of the end of the football season, having people over, got new rug, new lamp for the living room. We're still looking at coffee tables, haven't figured that out. It's also patio season. The selection at Wayfair is incredible. Got my wife a desk there actually not too long ago. They have free and fast shipping. It makes it super easy. You don't have to worry about hauling heavy items from the store. They also have top brands depending on what you're shopping for. So, GE, Moen, great prices there. The shopping is absolutely seamless. You'll find exactly what you need to fit your space and your style. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's wayfair.com, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right. Coming into the series, quick quiz question for you, the listener. What were the keys that I talked about at the beginning of the series for the Wolves? Areas, not just keys, but areas I thought the Wolves should win and could win relatively easily. Number 1 is 3-point shooting, and the Lakers have been really good there, but the Wolves have a slight edge. The other 2 were transition opportunities and offensive rebounding. I want to focus in especially on transition opportunities. And I also want to be clear here. Well, actually, we're going to talk about both of these. When I say transition opportunities, it's not simply the box score fast break number, because I know that could be misleading. It doesn't include secondary break opportunities or I like to call secondary break or semi-transition, some people will call it, but basically that second action off of a fast break. But you're not good. The point is you're not going against a set defense. And yeah, there might be, it's not exactly the 7 seconds or less, Suns. It might take 9 seconds, but you're getting a shot off relatively quickly in the shot clock because you're not going against a set defense. It might be a swing. You get the corner 3, and it's not chalked up in the box score as a fast break point necessarily. So what I'm about to cite are fast break points, which again are not even going to tell the full story. They're going to tell a lot of the story, but they're not going to tell the entire story. Okay. In game 1, the Timberwolves won fast break points, according to the box score, 25-6. Game 3, they won 21-11. Game 4, they won 16-7. And their one loss, they lost fast break points 13-6 to the Lakers. And I know in the regular season, Lakers did run at a greater pace than Minnesota. They had more. They tried to run more than Minnesota. But this version of the Lakers against this version of Minnesota, the Wolves should be more opportunistic. I've said this all along, and I don't want to go too far down that path for all the reasoning why. But like, this is a team the Wolves should be able to run against. So overall in the series, so 25-6, 21-11, 16-7. So in the games the Wolves have won, they've outscored the Lakers. They have 62 points in transition to the Lakers 24. So 62-24 in the games the Wolves have won is their fast break, according to the box score, their fast break advantage. That is a ton of free points. And that's not including the secondary break opportunities. It's not including, that's also not going to include if you miss a shot in transition, but you get the rebound against a broken floor situation, because there's just so much more space out there. Guys are scrambling. If you get that offensive rebound, like, there's some numbers on cleaning the glass we've talked about that do try to encompass all that, like points per miss and some of that stuff. And we talked about that the Wolves are actually, we talked about this with Lockdown Lakers a couple weeks ago. They rate out really well, but it doesn't include all that off. Say they get a fast break opportunity and Ant misses a three, but Rudy back taps the rebound and then they end up scoring on the possession. That's not counted as a fast break point in the box score. But yet those Wolves still won 62-23 in the 3 games they've won. And they lost game 2, 13-6 in box score fast break points. That is an area, and we could even bring back up the age / athleticism / stamina and the effect that less rest overall in the series at times, and certainly Friday to Sunday, game 3 to game 4, why that's an advantage for Minnesota. Now, the scales should be balanced a bit here with both teams having Monday and Tuesday off, headed back to LA. But that's an area the Wolves should continue to run off of Laker turnovers. I think a couple of those opportunities, we talked about this on Monday's show, when the Wolves kind of sent a surprise late double to Luka, poke the ball away. Like, be opportunistic there. Do the same with LeBron. I don't think you have to do it to Austin Reeves. I think you play him straight up with length and physicality. And that's worked to this point. But transition opportunities are huge still for Minnesota against this team. And if they're going to close them out on Wednesday, they're going to have to do that on the road. 25-6 in game 1. More of that, please. The last thing would be points to the paint / offensive rebounding. The offensive rebounding numbers, similar story here. Like, they're not overwhelming. In game 4, Minnesota won offensive rebounding 18-11. Again, this can be a little bit noisy as well. Game 3, they won it 9-7. They tied in the game 2 loss 9-9, and they lost it by 2 in the opening game that the Wolves won by 22 points. Now, remember, there were 6 Laker offensive rebounds in the 2-3 minutes of garbage time. So, like, when it mattered, and remember, that was also the game in game 1. At the first couple of minutes of the game, the Lakers had a bunch of offensive rebounds. So you take out garbage time and you take out the horrible start, and the Wolves win offensive rebounding like 11-3 or something like that in that game. So by and large, the Wolves have won the offensive rebounding battle. But what's come through even more significantly is points in the paint. Minnesota, through 4 games, is a plus 67 points in the paint. And it's not Rudy. Rudy's not scoring, right? Everybody's talked a lot about how Rudy's not scoring. But why aren't the Lakers scoring in the paint? Well, a couple of reasons. One, that's not really what Luka wants to do. It's not, Austin Reeves would like to do that, but he's not been able to do it. LeBron scored a lot on jump shots so far in the series. And he's been like the only guy scoring in the paint for the Lakers. None of their role players are scoring in the paint. Jackson Hayes didn't even play in the second half after he played himself off the floor in 4 minutes to start game 4. The technical foul, the whole thing, didn't even come out on the floor at all in the second half. There's no lob threat. Like, Rui Hachimura is not trying to score in the paint. Gabe Vincent certainly isn't trying to score in the paint. Like, these guys are not. Jared Vanderbilt doesn't score, period. So the points in the paint advantage is driven by Rudy. Certainly helps deter anybody that would think about scoring in the paint. But then Jaden McDaniel's activity level, to a lesser extent, guys like Naz, Dante, Alexander Walker, even. Conley made a tough layup the other night. I think it was game 3. The Wolves are doing much better at getting downhill. That's not even to mention Anthony Edwards. But the points in the paint thing overall being a plus 67 and crushing them in transition to the tune of 66 to 23 in fast, or 62 to 23 in fast break points in the 3 wins. That's a recipe to win. The 3-point margin can end up being similar, which it has been. Like the Lakers made 5 more threes than Minnesota. They made 19 threes in game 4. The Lakers made 17 threes, the Wolves 13 in game 3. Minnesota's a -4 in terms of makes outside the arc. The Lakers were Wolves were a -1 in game 2 when they only made 5 3-pointers, and the Wolves did make 6 more threes than the Lakers in game 1. That was the everybody's like, the Wolves will never do this again. Well, they were right. They haven't, but they've still won 2 out of the last 3 games, and it wasn't simply because they got hot from 3-point range. So the 3-point margin hasn't been what's expected, but the other 2 things have gone in their favor, and you just got to get 2 out of 3. I mean, that gets you there. That's all I got for you today. I want to hit tomorrow. Well, of course, talk about what to expect in game 5 back in LA on Wednesday night, but we'll talk a little bit. So we just talked about like when Minnesota has the ball, what they've done well. We'll talk a bit about what I anticipate the Lakers could do well in this series and how that has gone / not gone for them, and dig in on the other side of the ball a bit on Wednesday's show. So that's what we'll do to get you ready for Wednesday night. Of course, the live postcast, Jack on Wednesday night. I'm not sure if he's back in LA or not, but we'll have the live postcast for you Wednesday night after game 5. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder to subscribe to the daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. You get it to your email inbox every day, Monday through Friday, all things Wolves, all things NBA. And a reminder for your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Game Night show every night, every game until an NBA champion is crowned. Throughout the playoffs, get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.